Hello everyone, I'm here today with Gary Bolles. Thank you, Gary, for your availability.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here.
It's a great opportunity to me to be talking here to you today.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to a great conversation.
Right, Gary, for us to start, I want to know a little bit about your career and everything you have accomplished. There are so many things. I have searched about you, and well, I can't explain this better than you.
Okay.
So I want you to tell me a little bit more about your career, about your journey, and everything you have done these years.
So I'm a child of Silicon Valley. I grew up in San Francisco before it was called Silicon Valley. And I had the great benefit of getting into the technology arena pretty early on. There was a period of time where I was just bouncing around from job to job. I never really went to college, so didn't quite know what I wanted to do, but I was very lucky. There was this new thing called the IBM PC that came out in the early 1980s. And I ended up becoming a test engineer with no training for a computer company and testing software. And it sort of led through a path where I've worn about every hat you could wear in Silicon Valley. And then I became fascinated by how you help other people to learn about how technology is actually influencing their lives. So I sort of fell into magazines and newspapers. And I ended up being the editorial director for 6 different technology magazines in the early 90s, including the internet's first newspaper, Interactive Week. And then that sort of led to producing events and bringing people together around complex issues. And I became affiliated with Singularity University and became their longtime chair for the future of work. And now I'm a global fellow for transformation. But I've always been fascinated by the future of work, the future of learning, and the future of organizations. So those are typically the things that I'm asked to lecture on, to do courses on. I've got a dozen courses on LinkedIn Learning with about 1.5 million learners. And it's the kinds of things that here at IT Forum I want to be able to talk to the audiences about as well.
So how exactly did you change from a test engineer to a aficionado to the future of work? How exactly that happened? Because I know it's similar. I know we are talking about how work is changing because of of all new technologies.
Yeah.
But I also believe that it's something different there that made you, well, I need to start to study and to explain people how exactly we are going to change in the future and how exactly their work and their jobs are going to be affected by it.
No, absolutely. So when I was bouncing around from job to job when I didn't go to college, one of the odd jobs that I did, I ended up working for my father when I was 19 years old. And I was very lucky that my father was a former priest, Episcopalian priest, who'd been laid off. And he eventually wrote a book that became the world's career book. It's called What Color is Your Parachute? It's in Portuguese. There's 10 million copies in print. So I was trained to help others think about finding jobs and changing their careers when I was 19 years old. So that was one of those amazing experiences. I wish every 19-year-old on the planet had that same experience, because you learn by talking to people who are in their 40s and 50s and don't necessarily love their work, that you should do what you love. And so that was the message I got. I thought I loved technology, but because I was continually exposed to doing events, and especially with Singularity University, to helping people to understand how technologies are influencing our lives, our organizations, our industries, the questions around work kept coming up again and again. And here I've been trained in this arena, so I ended up starting to answer those questions in writing, in events, and in my courses, and then in a book called The Next Rules of Work. And it turns out that it's not isolated, because work is connected to how we learn. If we don't learn, it's very hard to do work. And then how we work and when we work and the context in which we work, well, that's called an organization. And so it's like a Venn diagram, and each of them sort of feeds the other. And it's important to have a perspective on how all of them are changing, because they're all interconnected.
Yeah. Well, yesterday we were talking at the lunch, and we were talking a lot about AI and how that's been changing everything we do, not just work. I believe every relation is just changing because of AI. But something that I get myself thinking is just because here in Brazil, well, we say that we are a bit late when compared to US. We do have many technologies, we do have lots of good people here, but I think the AI adoption is not exactly how we feel that US is.
Okay.
And there's lots of people that are just afraid of losing their jobs and something like this. But what exactly do you think? Because there are many people who says about work transition, like that the jobs are just changing, like it happens in industrial revolution, all of them, like people get out from the rural zones and just go to the cities, and that changed. I don't believe that we are going to see a geographic change, but I'm not pretty sure. What exactly do you think it's the biggest change that is going to happen in the next few years?
So first off, when I lecture around the world, I like to talk about just how it's different in different countries, and I want to encourage people not to worry that Brazil is behind or AI adoption here is much slower, because it's actually a little bit of an illusion as to how much the technologies are really being adopted, especially in America. Most of the headlines that you see are really about the tech companies that are selling the technologies and how they're using it, because they need their customers to see how they could use it themselves. And so it's more marketing than it is reality. An MIT study was done recently that said that of all the AI initiatives that they've analyzed around the world, only 5% actually generated some real business value. So this is an early phase of this, what I call the AI tsunami, and it has a lot of the similar characteristics to the early phases of the internet 30 years ago. And as I said, I started a magazine that could chronicle that development. So I'm very clear as to what the steps were. And so the first step is always this big sort of hype wave. Well, so where now could it be useful, and how is it different? So 30 years ago, we had a lot of the same discussion about jobs going away. There's lots of headlines from that period that said, no, the internet is going to change everything. It's going to change every job. It's going to make people from around the world be able to do your job, and your job will go away. And there still ended up being a lot of jobs. Here are the challenges, and here's the opportunities. So the challenge is if you were working in a mine, and now there's robots going down in the mine, and you can't do that anymore, you need to adapt. You need to transform. And so maybe then you learn the skill set of fixing wind turbines in the wind farms, and that's a pretty close set of skills to working with the machines down in the mine. And so then, now that job of fixing the turbines is gone. Now you've got to learn how to design turbines, and so you think of these steps. And as long as you can continually adapt, you'll be able to do the next work. And so the cultures, the societies that are flexible and adaptive are the ones that will eventually find the best uses. And one of the great advantages that Brazil has, which you might not think of as an advantage, but there's a fair amount of the economy that is what's often called an informal economy. It's individuals, they're doing their own, selling something or doing their own work. And so the opportunity is, with a country that's as entrepreneurial as Brazil is, eventually to find some of the use cases where the technologies can best be used. And so I urge people to say, don't worry about being behind. It's really more finding effective uses of the technologies in your own work or in your own life, and experimenting with them and playing with them. Now, that's not to say that there aren't organizations that have to go through a process of digital transformation because of competition. And so in that realm, if you're working for an organization that feels like its competitors are using the tools and they're not, then you've got a bunch of pressure. And that's a different process. That's a process where you need to develop your own AI strategy. You've got to develop a talent strategy related to AI and have all these pieces so that you can build the most rapidly adaptive organization possible.
Yeah, I have been seeing some studies in Brazil, and people are just also afraid of how that can be a bubble, like a financial bubble, as it happened in the internet bubble in the 2000s.
Yeah.
And there are some people afraid of investing their money in it. Some of them are just optimistic and they think that it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And what I ask you is just, you have been in Silicon Valley for like lots of years.
Yeah.
And what exactly do you think it's the most different thing between this wave and the other ones?
Yeah.
Because you have seen, for example, the metaverse, that some people says it's going to go back, some people doesn't believe in it, and well, what exactly you think it's different, and what's your opinion about this potential financial bubble?
Yeah. Well, so first off, I mean, we're always constructing the future, as you can see by having all the workmen walking behind us. We're always constructing the future. But what's the same and what's different? So what's the same is that Silicon Valley always goes through these hype cycles over and over again. And what it does is people feel they've got FOMO, fear of missing out, and so they heavily invest in the technologies. It used to be in the internet era, it was web servers and routers and that sort of thing. And then, as you say, in the 2000s, there's a meltdown. And suddenly people have all this equipment sitting around. What do we do with this? And then along comes cloud computing. Okay, now we can hand the equipment off to somebody else. So there's always these hype waves continually, always big bubbles. We're starting to reach the end of that initial curve. Always hard to know. But Silicon Valley has a big investment in wanting us to continually be sucked in and pulled forward in the hype curves. And so I'd say, if you want certainty, don't invest in anything related to the technology because it's going to change all the time. But if you want to be able to get a sense of just how the waves are developing, it's pretty clear that the initial wave of some of the initial uses of the technologies, we've got some ideas about what some of those use cases are. But there's still so many ways that technologies can be used, and the technologies are moving so rapidly. I always tell people to advance with caution unless you've got very, very clear business case uses of it. And so what's pretty likely is, I don't think there's a crash coming, but I think it's likely that we'll just see that all this investment made by the tech companies, and especially by their venture capitalists, does not really show yet in what you'd think of as substantial companies, because for the most part, most of the advanced AI companies have either been acquired or have some deep relationship with just six Silicon Valley companies, from NVIDIA to Google. And so it's taking all this innovation and it's sort of pulling it back into the same vortex of the same big companies. And we're not yet seeing these really breakout innovators that are independent, where there's a technology that is going to, or an approach that's necessarily going to be defining the next wave. It's probably going to continually be defined by the big giants.
So going through AI to the future of jobs, something that people is talking a lot about. There is a interview of Sam Altman in the last year where he says about, I think it's last year, where he says that we are going to see the next 1 billion company with only one person, like one person team, unicorns.
Yeah.
I believe you have seen this.
Yeah.
And that's a huge impact to the future of work.
Yeah.
But I also feel that it isn't really, can I say, it doesn't feel to me that this is truly something, I'm not going to say possible. I think we are just far away from it.
Yeah, so there's a lot of possible futures. One of the things that I do with Singularity University is I host a podcast called Possible Futures. And so I get to talk to some of the most amazing experts on exponential technologies, especially AI. And so there's a number of possible futures. And there's a possible future where the technology automates a huge number of people's jobs and there's not as many jobs. But there's also another possible future where there's just tremendous abundance. And so, as Mr. Altman is fond of saying, that there's all this new value to be created, and one person, one entrepreneur using the technologies could create all this value. That will happen. That's going to happen. There will be, billion-dollar companies with only one or two people in them. I always want to caution people, though, because it is still marketing for especially the AI software developers. So I
Let's stop a minute, because they are trying to.
Yeah, test the sound.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Okay.
I think we can. Okay.
So I often say to people, here's the two headlines I'm suggesting you don't read. Sam Altman says, don't read that article. And I asked ChatGPT, ... Don't read that article. because it's just marketing. It's just it's laziness because Mr. Altman is very, very smart, and he's built a rapid growth company, which is an amazing accomplishment. However, he and many people in Silicon Valley have a vested interest in painting the picture of a future where their technologies win. The only way to really win with these technologies is to automate a whole bunch of people's work. At least that's their mindset. And so that means that you don't pay humans anymore, you're gonna pay them for their software. You're gonna hire an AI employee, you're gonna have an AI coworker, which I completely reject. And so instead what I'd suggest is think of it this way as there's always these waves of change, wave after wave of change. And then there's a next model where there are people that figure out, crack the code of that model, and they're the ones that benefit fastest. So yes, there will be entrepreneurs that will be $1 billion AI unicorns. In the same way with social media, there was this brand new thing called an influencer. We never used the word influencer in that context of somebody who could post a video on Instagram or TikTok and suddenly have millions of people buying something because they said to do it. So there will always be people that are able to take advantage of the wave, but the big questions are how many people, what's the pace and the scale of change for the majority of people? And as you say, in Brazil and countries all around the world, and as you say, people around the world are like in Brazil, are not rapidly adopting the technologies as much, and it's because they are afraid. They're afraid it's going to automate their jobs, or they don't yet know how to use those technologies as well as they could. So I say there's a possible future where there's the demand for jobs shrinks, but there's still a lot of humans, and there's another possible future where there's huge demand and just not enough humans to do it. It will probably be both. There'll be people who will be able to take advantage of the technologies and continually adapt, and there's others who won't be able to adapt as quickly.
Yeah.
And that means, I'm sorry, just one quick thought. That means that I want to shift the dialogue. The dialogue has to stop from just automating people's work out of existence to creating tools that amplify people, that augment people, that help them to learn faster, solve new problems faster, collaborate more effectively. If we can shift that mindset and have more and more of the technology designed to do that, then we're going to have a much better future.
Yeah, something that I see, like just around me, I see two types of person. There are some that are just very conservative, and they just tend to ignore that AI is there. And there is some people that are very optimistic, and they think that, well, that's what's going to make them billionaires, or that's the major reason they are going to be like removed or something like this.
Yeah.
So, what do you think it's the true equilibrium? For people, like if you could talk to Gary with 20 years old that is living in AI era, what exactly would you say to this Gary, that is 20 years old and it's not exactly in Silicon Valley, but that it's living in AI era, not exactly an entrepreneur, but I believe many people that are watching me and most part of my public are like young people that doesn't really know exactly how to adapt to this era, like people in areas that are not exactly business. They don't know truly how to adapt. For example, doctors or people from other areas that are not exactly, well, not today at least, that are not obligated to use it. Should they start to look at this with a little bit more of optimism, or let them be conservative and wait the market start and then they adapt? What do you think is the best way to follow?
So in my book, The Next Rules of Work, which is also in Portuguese, the framing that I use, I talk about three things: mindset, skill set, tool set. So your mindset is how you approach the world and your life. Skill set is the energies, the capacities that you have, and then tool set is the technologies and the techniques that we use in our work. So what you were just talking about to me is mindset. And there's a great book called Mindset by Dr. Carol Dweck, which is also in Portuguese. And she says, well, there's lots of different mindsets, but when it comes to reactions to change, I think there's really two sort of ends of the spectrum. And there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And a fixed mindset says, I love certainty, I love repetition, I just want to do my work and go home and see my family. And there's nothing wrong with that, except that we live in a world of exponential change. So then there's this growth mindset which says, oh no, there's tremendous opportunity. And so maybe 20-year-old Gary should be thinking about all the different things that he could be doing with his skills and to solve new problems. And so neither is wrong. They're both exactly right. They're both wonderful mindsets, except that the fixed mindset makes it very, very difficult to adapt. And so if you're a doctor, if you're a lawyer, if you're an engineer, all of those work roles will continually change. You're a doctor, you're going to be using your cell phone to aid you in a diagnostic process, or to be able to use AI software to record your patient talking, and that's just going to infuse more and more of your work. If you can adapt, if you can continually change and have this growth mindset, it's going to be easier for you. And if you have a fixed mindset, no, I'm a lawyer, I want to do the same work I've done all along, and then suddenly automation changes that work dramatically, you won't be as prepared. And so I don't want people to be afraid. I want them to be excited. I want them to be curious. I'm not saying that you need to suddenly drop everything and become an expert in the use of the tools, but find uses, find things that excite you, find ways to use them that help you to have a little more time in your day, or to solve new problems, or to ideate solutions to new problems. And so that you have that support, you've got this tool that can help you to be much more flexible in the way that you approach your life and your work.
Right, so we have been talking about people and how they should adapt, but well, you speak all around the world about how companies should adapt to the future of work. So what exactly do you think, but not just looking to big companies and big techs and companies like these, but how exactly do you think that the market should start to look at the future of work, and how exactly you think it should adapt, you know?
Absolutely. So, and I'll talk specifically about how young people nowadays change that calculus. So whether you're in an organization that's small or large, it's an organization of people. Yes, there are other assets, but you know, the long time statement about the value of organizations is that the greatest asset, the greatest value that any organization has walks out every day, goes home. Or if they're working from home, stops, you know, closes the laptop. And so because people are the backbone of any organization, if you want to change, you want to continually adapt, you want to deal with new competitive pressures, you want to find ways to do new products and services, it's people and change. And so there's a wonderful expert on the human brain, Dr. Evian Gordon, who's a great friend and collaborator, largest brain database in the world. And if you ask him to distill all the insights about the human mind and how we deal with change, he has a great way of simplifying it down to just two words: safety first. We tend to just be protecting what we have and sort of stay where we are. But if you run even a small organization where you see new opportunity, maybe you're a creative agency, maybe you're providing marketing services to people, maybe you're providing digital tool development, whatever the focus of the organization is, it's critical to have a mindset that there will always be new ways to create value for your customers or other stakeholders, new ways to be able to help humans, to be able to find the ways they can leverage their own skills and their own mindset to be able to help solve problems. But you have to be more flexible and adaptable. So if you have an old style company and you require everybody to be in the office for exactly the same amount of time, and you have the same processes that you're using over and over again, and you're not using a lot of technology, much, much harder to adapt. And then especially if you're trying to attract young people, which many organizations are trying to do. I sit down with CEOs all around the world, and they say, well, these young people, you know, they ask me about the purpose of my organization. You know, and they don't like the answer, then they quit. And if they do like the answer, then on day 3, they're trying to run the organization. I mean, how do I, so I say, look, I don't use labels like Gen Z and Gen Y, because I think young people nowadays are a new species. I think it's just a completely different kind of human. And I think it's a wonderful kind of human, but it's a kind of human that has what I often call optionality. Because they have, most of us have these digital distraction devices, these cell phones that we carry around. Young people have far more interconnections and connectivity between them. They often know when their friends are doing a startup, or when there's a job that they like or a job that they hate. And so because they've got all that information, all those market signals coming from all these places that didn't exist when I was young, they often see that they have more options, and then it's harder to keep them. It's harder to keep them fascinated by the work that they're doing. So this is one of the great challenges and opportunities from people that run organizations from small to large. How can you create a flexible environment where people can continually identify problems that need to be solved, take their own skills and mindset that they can continually develop and adapt and keep on matching up to the work that motivates them. And if you can create that operating system for your organization, you will have the people that you need today and tomorrow to create the value for your stakeholders.
Right. So for us to end this conversation, that was just amazing. I just learned a lot with everything you told me. I'm not even asking to people right now. I just want to ask you, for me, a counsel.
Yeah.
What exactly, like, what do you think that I should hear, or something that people doesn't say all the time around, that you think, looking to not a 20 now, a 22 years old guy who's just talking to you right now, what exactly you could say and you think that is going to be important to me to hear?
All right. So one of the things that I learned when I was doing the work with my father, when I was a career counselor when I was 19 years old, is that I often found people that were the happiest, or at least had felt that they were had the most meaning in their lives, were the ones that had some kind of Southern Cross or North Star that pulled them forward. And you know that the ancient seafarers, when they would go from Europe to come to Brazil, they didn't have a GPS, but they had the stars. And so that's a general direction to go that pulls you forward. And so the same thing for people young and old, and everybody in between, is what is that North Star or Southern Cross? What pulls you forward? What's the passion? And it could be the skills that you love to use. It could be the problems you love to solve. It could be the kinds of people that you like to be around. It could be the kinds of customers that you work with, or there's all sorts of different aspects of what your work and your life can be. It could be just learning new things. Whatever that is, I want to urge everybody to continually have that mindset that there is that Southern Cross. There is something in your life. And if you don't have it, I'm not saying that's not a great life. I'm just saying try to find it. Find something that you're curious about, or that you're fascinated by, that pulls you forward. And if it's just making money, awesome, I get that. But if it's something that actually motivates you, that encourages you to want to create, or to want to be able to do the best possible work that you can do, the more you have that pulling you forward, the more meaning and fulfillment I think you'll find.
Thank you, Gary.
All right.
Thank you for availability.
That's great.
I hope you enjoy Brazil and your last days here.
Oh no, I love every day I've ever spent in Brazil. So.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.